but also like your unique methodology is not just going to be about getting a result, it's about getting a result in a specific way.
One of the most important things you will always need to get right in business is your offer. Not a proposal, not a presentation, your offer, because people buy what you offer, not what you do. So today we're going to be talking about how to write better offers. And to help me out, I have Ross O'Loughlin. He's the founder of Conversion Engineering. He works with coaches, course creators, trainers, education entrepreneurs. If you sell your knowledge or expertise at Conversion Engineering, they do what it says on the box. They help you convert better using engineering. Ross, how are you, mate?
I'm fab, James. That was a great intro. You even got the engineering right in the Ron Seal reference. You guys have Ron Seal in Australia, right?
We got what?
Ron Seal. It did. So like it does what it says on the tin. It does what it says on the box.
Says on the tin. We talk about biscuit tin marketing. So in the early days of Australia, gold rush days, you'd buy things in tins, and biscuit tins became these really decorative things because you'd go, I know what's in that tin. There are biscuits because it says biscuit tin.
Yeah,
and I'm sure you see this all the time, but we see people. I think you'll like this. I saw someone the other day and they were telling me what their company does, and they do liquid transfer solutions. Guess what that is? Liquid transfer solutions. Have a guess.
Something is flowing from somewhere to somewhere else.
Pipes and hoses. Pipes and hoses, man. And can't you just see someone saying, oh, I know what will sound good. Liquid transfer solutions. Wow, that sounds fancy.
It sounds fancy. Yeah. So that, I bring it up because it's interesting. Since we're talking about offers and we're getting into offers, like Ron Seal is it's a company in the UK. Like I always bring that up, like it does what it says on the tin, because that was like their slogan. And I mentioned that to folks in the US all the time, and they have no idea what it is. But it's a slogan that was always like just prominent in my youth. And like a Ron Seal value proposition. It does what it says in the tin, always works well.
Well, you're obviously Irish. You're now in Montreal. I'll tell you one that I always say when I'm speaking with Americans. I'll often talk about Robbie Williams, and I talk about Robbie Williams because he only had about 3 hit songs, but he still performs 5 nights a week, and he just does the same 11 songs. And for everyone there, it feels like a brand new concert, right?
Yeah.
And that's in business. We get bored about what we do a lot sooner than the customers and clients do.
Totally.
But I mentioned Robbie Williams. Do you know that name?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
No one in America knows that name.
No, yeah. What's it? Like he was on. Yes, I do. The pop star from the UK who was, I can't remember. I'm straining to remember.
Take That or something, or one of the other.
One of those boy bands, yeah. And he stood out, and he was a legend. Yeah, I know the guy.
Yeah. Hey, we've only just started the podcast, but I've got to get you to say it, and then I got to work out whether we're going to beep it out or not. You've got a new bit of training coming up. It's copywriting training.
Yes.
And we were just talking about biscuit tin, and it says what it does. What's the name of your training?
Yeah, training is called How to Write Like a Motherfucker.
For some reason, when an Irish person swears, it doesn't sound like swearing.
No, it's lyrical.
Is it Father Ted? Was that from Ireland? That TV show?
Yes. One of my cult classic. If you talk to anyone from Ireland, they will know Father Ted.
Because I was allowed to watch that growing up, and they'd say "fuck" all the time, and I'd say, "Are they saying what I think they're saying?" And my parents saying, "No, they're saying a different word."
Yeah, they're saying "feck." They say "feck" instead of "fuck." Yeah, because they would get away with saying "feck" on TV, but not the F-bomb.
So tell me about this writing course. Who's it for, and where does it step in?
So it's for the group we were just talking about, right? Like, so if you're an expert coach, consultant, if you're any sort of thought leader in this online knowledge, wisdom transfer game, right? Like you're getting paid for your expertise and your experience, essentially, whether you're going to be selling some sort of productized service or whether you're selling like some sort of course showing people how to do do a thing, like you need to have people bought into you and your ideas, right? Like you need to have, a methodology, you need to have IP, you need to have authority. And to do that, like people have to understand your ideas and go, oh, I like the way this person thinks. Like if they're going to hire your experience, they have to understand that you have like, a level of insight and intellectual property that's worth paying for, whether to learn themselves or have you apply it in their world, right? And that just requires a lot of communication. Like that's how you get ideas across, is through communication, whether it's on video, whether it's in the written form, on a podcast like this. Like it's essentially idea transfer, all right? Interesting conversations to get ideas across. And what I noticed was a lot of folks kind of got hyped up on the AI bandwagon with
Oh, yeah.
ChatGPT and all this, myself included. Like I'm not here to take a dump on AI. I use it almost
We all
daily.
use the shortcuts. Absolutely. All
Yeah,
the time.
totally. And it's an incredibly powerful tool. But I'm coming from an engineering background where like I've done programming, and I'm not like a high level programmer, but like I have a logical programmatic way of thinking, because that's how engineers get trained to think. And I'm also a very experienced like senior copywriter slash copy chief who is responsible for training other writers on how to get good at writing, but also like giving them a project and saying, here's instructions on how to do it. And then when they come back, giving them focused, targeted feedback on how to make edits to that copy to accomplish the outcomes I wanted the copy to be able to accomplish. Meaning, like, I know how to do that. And it's a skill. And essentially, when you're talking with AI, like that's what you need to do. Like you need to communicate to it like it's another human, and you need to be able to give it focused feedback on what it needs to change in order for it to produce a piece of writing that's close to satisfactory to what you would want it to be. And it's incredible what it can do when you kind of zoom out and look at how far technology has come. But when you look, like, with all my skills, and I'm saying, not to say I'm brilliant and I'm the world's leading authority in AI, but I'm definitely far ahead of my clients and the people that I serve. And when I was trying to get it to produce an output that, like, it's just nowhere anywhere close to the sort of
Yeah.
energy or humanity or the sort of copy that makes me go like, that's really me, and I would want someone to read that and think Ross wrote that, right? It's nowhere close. And I was
We
looking
say
at
it's
my,
so smart, but it's so dumb. So
oh, totally.
the things you could do is so smart, but it's so dumb. We often get it to write emails for us, and they always begin with, "I hope you are well." Now we
Yeah.
know now that the future of emails are never going to include the words "I hope you are well," because
Hope you're well.
whenever
Yeah.
they do, everyone's going to go, this is an AI written email."
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
other bit, because my background in magazines and the like, and I used to edit other people's stuff, there's always a line that always at the beginning of the copy, it's like, in an ever-changing technological world,
Yeah.
copywriting is super important. And the
Yeah.
reality is Ross, if you saw that, you would take that big line from the front and it would just begin with, copywriting is super important, because that
Yeah.
big line added no value. But for some reason,
Yeah.
humans need to do that when they want to write bad copy. And then ChatGPT copies everyone's bad copy because it's doing is copying the sum game of everybody else's copy.
Yeah. Totally. The reason I did the writing training was because I was seeing everyone thinking, oh, this is going to be a great way for me to avoid the pain and stress and frustration of having to do my own writing. Because for a lot of people, the act of writing is not actually enjoyable. I personally have a blast writing like every day, right? Like it's something that I enjoy doing because I have a healthy creative process. And I was just seeing all my clients, like wanting to secretly hope that Chat GPT would be the solution to that suffering, so they wouldn't actually have to do the writing. But B, they were really struggling to be able to get a satisfactory output. And I was just like, this is going to end in disaster, because there's so many sharp marketers out there telling people you're behind the curve. And unless you like master ChatGPT and get it to write your stuff, you're gonna be falling behind. And I'm like, no, this is not the way. In fact, I think people who use ChatGPT who are not strong writers are going to be at more of a disadvantage because they're not going to be good enough writers or copy editors to like to
Mm,
notice the things like you just said, right? They're not going to be able to notice that this thing looks and sounds like everyone else because they just see it and think, oh, that's a better version than what I would have done on my first version, and they think it's an improvement and they ship it. But their audience is going to be on the receiving end of 50,000 ChatGPT articles that all look and just it's going to essentially start being the equivalent of stock photography, right? Like you see a
yeah.
stock photograph on a website and you just instantly discount this as like whatever. I don't really
Clip
like it's an
art.
ad.
Clip art.
Totally, right?
Yeah. Clip
Totally.
art in a PowerPoint
So
presentation.
yeah. So I just like I said, this is the training. I got the solution here for everyone is to double down and get more of their humanity into their writing, more of their imperfections into their writing by writing with like intention and speed rather than and solving the pain that they have from the creative process of writing their thought leadership work rather than thinking like this is a speed way to replace myself with a robot. Like I just don't think that's like people are not looking for artificial intelligence in this space. Like they're looking for actual intelligence and people with genuine wisdom. And you're not going to communicate that if you're getting some AI bot to spin out your emails.
Well, you actually dropped a couple of words and a couple concepts that we'll dive into a bit deeper. One is that you mentioned energy and humanity. You know, everything that we do has got to have energy and humanity. But from an output perspective or an outcome perspective, when we're talking about writing and we're talking about our target audience, there are three types of writing or output that everyone's going to want to be across. The first one is offers, and that's the topic that we're here to talk about, how to write better offers. Then you also dropped in the idea of thought leadership, and people hire us because, as you said, they like the way that we think. And then there was another bit of language that you dropped in a little bit earlier, and it whooshed in and it whooshed out of the conversation. You said they need a methodology, they need IP, they need authority. The three biggest areas of writing, I believe, are one, the offers piece, the thought leadership piece, and also the methodology piece, because that's what sets, say, a consultant apart from the other consultants or the coach apart from the other coaches. And the crazy thing for me, Ross, I don't know if it's like in your world, is that people come into my world and they say, I want to do a better offer or I want to get famous on social media. That's the thought leadership bit. And then I say, oh, do you have a method or a signature method or a methodology? And then they say, what's that? Which immediately means they're doing the same as everybody else. So let's just pause on that one, the methodology. How do you help people with their methodology? Are you using AI to help with that, or do you have any starting points?
Totally. Yeah. So like the method, everyone has a methodology. If they don't know what it is, it's just because they haven't documented it and because they haven't, I would say, formalized it. Right. It's like the old expression, like the person who says they have no systems just has really badly documented inefficient systems that might be ineffective. Right. But they have a default way of doing things, which might be, well, I have all the details in my head and I remember to go do them when I get some cue, like my bank balance hits zero, right? Like that might be your system for doing sales, right? And that's not an effective system. And it's the same thing with a methodology. Like the way I think about methodology is it's your method for producing the outcome that people are hiring you to produce, right? Like if we're getting into offers, like it's all an offer is a promise of an outcome through some product or service, essentially, right? Like people, they will buy the product because the product or the service is the delivery vehicle, but what they really are buying are the outcomes, right? The change to their reality that they can expect from that. Whether that's like going from I'm starving to I'm no longer starving, which is what you're buying when you're like looking for lunch, right? Like it's just or when you're hiring a coach, right? You're like, I have no leads and I want people to respond to my emails. Like that's the outcome of having like a lead gen system as an example. So
well, I think as well too, like if your other goals are you want to be a thought leader or you want to prepare an offer, if you're preparing an offer, one of the best things that you can have is a methodology because it creates this use case certainty. So I go, okay, well, I'm a coach or I'm a consultant, and Ross has his 3-part process for
Exactly.
getting inbound leads from copywriting. That answers that question. Well, it answers 2 questions. The first question is, what am I going to get? Well, I'm going to
Yeah,
get inbound leads. And then the second bit is this right for me?
totally.
And the
Yeah,
methodology screams, is this right for me? The third one, does the person have what it takes? Yeah,
yeah,
they do. They got a freaking methodology. And then how fast is it going to take? Well, it's going to be speedy because we've got a methodology. How much
yeah.
effort is it going to take? Well, it's going to take less effort because we're going to follow a plan or a process, a methodology. Have you seen Simon Bowen's stuff? Have you seen his stuff?
I do. Yeah, yeah. Simon's great. Yeah, he's a genius when it comes to the models.
His model's
Yeah.
called the Genius Model. That was it.
Yeah.
That was a joke there, guys and gals. Check out Simon Bowen if you're listening to this or you're watching. Simon created a genius model, and I've leveraged it in my own way. I'm sure you have too, Russ. And it's a way to pull together a methodology. Are you
Yeah.
using AI to help with methodologies
So
yet?
so yeah, yeah. So like the way I like, because I use AI daily, and I use it for research a lot. Like that's definitely one of my daily use cases. I also use it as a brainstorming partner because I find what it's really good at is like if I give it like a half-baked idea, right? And I'm like, here's like I was doing a work recently. I was working on the key principles for something that I'm calling the Tao of creative motherfuckery, right? Which is kind of like the principles behind someone who's a creative motherfucker, who is someone who writes like a motherfucker, right? And you get paid to create. And so I was kind of, sometimes you're just documenting what you already have done and you're sharing what you've done. But sometimes you're like writing and you're creating in a way where you're like at the cusp of your understanding. And this is the first time that you're like documenting these things and you're like, I think these are it. And you kind of make a list of the principles, but then you're like, am I missing some? Because sometimes like I'll be doing that and then I'll look at somebody else's principles and I'll see one of their principles and it's kind of not the exact way I would say it, but it prompts me to be like, oh yeah, absolutely. That's definitely one of the key principles I rely on. It's just I hadn't brainstormed it yet. And I find AI is great at doing that. It's helping you like say, hey, so these are the principles I've got. Can you like paint out like the complete picture here? Am I missing any angles? And then it will say, well, you've got like these 6 principles and they're kind of these 3 are similar and these 4 are similar and there's 2 here. And then it's kind of pulling categories out that I hadn't noticed before. And I'm like, well, it's getting the categories wrong, but it did categorize those 3 as belonging together, which is right. And so it starts to give me information. And it usually gets it wrong, but it starts prompting my noggin to start going, oh, that's wrong, but there's definitely like something there. So definitely as a brainstorming partner, it's useful. And then when you submit it, it's like, can you poke any holes in this? It's very good at being kind of a critical reader. And it's like, well, you don't have any proof on this principle, or this thing kind of doesn't support that thing. And again, not to agree with it, but it gets me.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
come back to that poking holes one. But that's
Yeah.
really I'd totally forgotten about that, and I haven't been doing that enough. When I say
Yeah.
what's wrong with something,
Yeah.
the methodology piece, sometimes it's just so simple. You can go, uh, you can go. I'm a taxidermist. I'm coming up with a profession. I'm a taxidermist. Um, and who would be the top 5 types of people likely to buy what I sell? And it comes back as seasonal hunters, right? And then you'd go, what are the top 3 things that a seasonal hunter would expect from me? And then it comes to these 3 things and you go, oh, that's the 3 outcomes that they want. And
Yeah.
and then you just drill down, and then suddenly you go, oh, that's what I've been doing. And that's what I've been saying that I've been doing, but I haven't ever mapped it in any clear way.
Yeah.
And it's just come out.
Yeah, totally. And that like usually what I'm doing with it is I am not trying to get the robot, the AI to create the final output. That's what a lot of people are trying to do. They're trying to give it instructions to like have it print out on the screen what you want it to do. Like usually when I'm working with AI, I have another document open and I'm taking, copying and things out and pasting it in and organizing it because I'm just using it as a thinking partner. And that's a hyper productive, high value, smart way of using it. I think where people fail with it and why I did the how to write like a motherfucker training is because they're hoping secretly that they will find some prompt that they can put into it and that then they will be able to get it to output a final piece of copy that they can just copy and paste into their social media feed or whatever. And that's
Mm.
just not like if you're trying to expect is to create something that then you can slap your humanity on top of and pass off as your own. I just from a ethical standpoint, I don't agree with that. And I
Yeah.
also don't think that's like you're just going to get killed in the marketplace of ideas if that's how you're defaulting to the value you see in your own writing, right? Like it's just you're gonna go up against people like me who are right? Like, or other writers who have genuine, like Simon Bowen, right? Like Simon Bowen is not getting AI to do his writing, right? Like he has his own thought leadership pieces that he's in the marketplace every day helping people. He's getting insights and then he's writing about those things from a place of like, here's what happened in my life, right? Recently
Yeah.
in my work. And it's a fresh idea. It's not like trying to get the AI to replace him, if that makes
Here's an
sense.
interesting observation that I hadn't had till then is that he also, like you and I, does a lot of video,
Mm,
which AI simply can't do. But for those people that don't have a methodology, and going back to Ross, talking about it as a partner, it could just be a good start to go in there and say, what is a methodology? What would a
mm,
methodology look like in my industry? At least just to get you started. Simon's model starts with 3 circles, and it's usually
mm.
this outcome and this outcome and this outcome, and you pull them together and create something else. You just also then slid into this idea of writing posts, and everybody wants just to throw in a bunch of keywords and as a bunch of prompts, and it writes a thought leadership post. Incidentally, I
Mm.
got to say, yesterday I wrote a post that I'd written myself because that's the way I do it too,
Mhm.
on, and on LinkedIn. But I swear the first comment was AI written.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I didn't call the person out. I just gave them a like because it's a bit of engagement and what have you.
Uh,
Um, but I looked at it and then I went away and I looked at it again. And you don't want to call someone out,
but
but
you
it was
remember.
yeah, but it was a comment, but it was just so lacking in substance. Use the words
Yeah,
energy and humanity. It lacked both energy and
totally.
humanity. And part of me was like, why did he even write this comment? And I think that he's writing this comment as part of a strategy to show that he exists or something.
Yeah.
If you can't write content, comment on other people's content, which is still a very valid strategy.
Mm.
But please, add an opinion at least. I think this guy just agreed with me in vague terms.
Yeah, totally. That's case in point, right? And then like it's like, yeah, sure, it's a valid strategy to be seen and be visible to a certain extent, unless people see you as being someone that's using AI to comment on threads, right?
I like how they think.
Yeah,
I don't like how this guy thought. I've already forgotten
yeah,
who.
exactly.
The only thing that I
Yeah,
remember about it is how fake it seemed. But
yeah.
this thought leadership stuff, let's talk about that. So thought leadership,
Yeah,
super
so
important.
totally. So just what I would say, like the simplest way I would help someone get their methodology, which also like goes back to the topic of offers, because the offer is going to be essentially like, hey, come work with me. We'll get these outcomes. If you're wondering how we'll get the outcomes, we're going to solve these problems with this methodology. That's typically how a great thought leadership, intellectual property, expert based offer course will go. And if you're wondering what your methodology is, just who's hiring you, who's your target market, what's the outcome that they want or that you're going to produce for them, just sit down and just start listing out the steps, like all of the steps, and like logically brain dump them. They don't have to be in a perfect order initially, but just get all the steps out. Imagine someone appears on your front door and they have what you need to make them successful. Like what's step one, what's step two, what's step three. And then some of these steps might be like conditionally dependent, we'll say, right? Like someone comes and they show up at my door. I'm like, well, do they have an email list or not? Because if they don't have an email list, we have to generate leads first. If they do have an email list, we can just test an offer, right? So like some of these things may start to appear and you're like, if you ever tell yourself, oh, well, it depends on, like, write that down because all of this is like basically a logic branch that is your unique method and your unique process for getting the result for someone. And gradually what will start to happen is like the big chunks will start to appear because all of the steps, it's like a giant project in Asana, right? Like, you have the project title, and then in the project title, there's like 5 or 6 big chunks. And then inside you double click into each of those, there's going to be small things to do. Like we have to like launch the product is the big thing, right? And then as part of that, we have to write the sales page. Well, then in the sales page, we have to like define the value proposition, write the headline, like find the hero image. Like all of these are kind of sub steps in that larger category. And what you're looking for is kind of like, as you list everything out, what are the big chunks and roughly what order are they in? And then can you explain them and then just give the steps kind of cool names is the simple way to define it, right? Like everyone is kind of doing things similarly because most of the time, like there's a truth behind effective processes for any particular space, but also like your unique methodology is not just going to be about getting a result, it's about getting a result in a specific way. Like as an example, I essentially do the same job as Jeff Walker, right? Which is sell online programs. People come to me because they want to sell online programs. People go to Jeff Walker because they want to sell online programs. But Jeff Walker has his way of doing things, and he's kind of appealing to a certain way of doing things, which is like, hey, we'll do a big multi-million-dollar launch, right? And like you'll have a huge event, and it's going to be like one big event. That's a very different approach to how I want to do it, which is like, I don't want to do $1 million launch. I used to do launches and I burnt out in them. I just want to be able to wake up every day, have an awesome list of buyers, send an email, make some cash, and then have like a consistent program in the background where I'm working with a small group of people that pay me handsomely, right? It's a different method. It's a different set of outcomes that I'm interested in. And then so there might be similarities between my unique methodology and Jeff's, but the outcomes are different. And what you want to be able to articulate is like, what is your method for getting the outcomes in the way that you like to do them or in the way you produce them for your clients? Because there's many different ways to skin a cat, as they would say, right?
And I do need to say for context, and this is that was a great example, Russ, and that is because Jeff Walker has this thing called the product launch formula, and I've done a bunch of seed launches following his particular formula, where you build an audience, you have this like, window of opportunity and you put out an offer and there's a deadline. However, Ross has something called the open everyday system. And so me personally, I prefer a Ross style of open everyday system because I've gone and done those launches and it's stressful and it can cost a whole lot of money. But however, that's the one that I prefer. The outcome is the same. The outcome is that you're filling your course, or you're filling your membership, whatever model that you're using. But the main thing to take away from Ross is I think that there's going to be chunks and there's going to be phases. So even like tomorrow, I'm doing a session on LinkedIn. So I'm like, how am I going to do training on LinkedIn? So my brain goes, well, what are the big chunks? Well, one is the profile. One is going to be your content strategy. And the third one I call your off-ramp. That's to get your future customers off LinkedIn. And then allowed me that creates my methodology. Here's my 3-step methodology. We're going to work through your profile, your content strategy, your off-ramp. And then I'll often go, okay, well, that's my 3 things. And I'll attribute 3 things to each of the 3 things. So I'll like go, okay, well, if it's the profile, what are the 3 most important things to get right? And that's just my way of doing it because my brain operates in 3, and I find people don't remember a lot more than 3.
Yeah. No, I love the rule of 3. And so usually when I'm doing things, I want to also break it down into that eventually. But like step 1 is It's just a
List it.
series of steps.
Get it all
It's
out.
steps,
I'm
and
glad
there's
you said that.
phases, and there's chunks. Yeah.
That's a different perspective to the way that I've been doing it. And when you said it, my brain is like, yeah, there's so many of our customers and clients that would get a better result if they did it Ross's way, which is another example of we all do our things different ways.
Totally. Totally. Right. And so once you start to see the chunks and whatnot, you can give them stand-in names, but naming your stuff really is the key to like this whole intellectual property expertise game, right?
Yeah.
And like how many lead gen systems are there out there? There's 20 million lead gen systems, right? Like my lead gen system though is called the lead refinery. And there's only one lead refinery, and it's how I do it. And then that's the series of steps for how I help my clients like get leads from Facebook and then refine them into the type of prospect they want to
That's
work
nice.
with
I
over
like that.
time. Right? Cool. It's clear, but it's also got the flavor of my way of doing things. And that's really the magic trick is you got to name your things in a way that's clear and understandable, but also then aligned with your brand, personality, method, outcomes, however you want to do it, right? Like, because the methodology is essentially a way to produce the style of outcome that they're looking for. But there's, as I said, like there's an infinite number of way of doing things. People are looking for the approach that resonates with them, and you just need to be honest and clear about what that is and what you think is right. Like have some beliefs and some stances and a point of view of the right way of doing things, and be a little cocky about it if you want to like add a little sauce in. But that's really the trick to getting your unique methodology. And then that perfectly segues into then the offer is like, would you like the outcomes of my unique process? And then if you do, come on in and we will implement and apply my unique methodology or a part of it in order to get that outcome, right? So as an example, I might say to you, say, James, you short on leads? Would you like to build a lead gen system so you can get 50 leads a day and have those turn into like 4-figure clients? Well, we'll build the first version of my lead refinery together in the next 45 days. Would you like to work on that? And then you're aware of my process and, my lead refinery because I've explained the methodology to you beforehand in my emails, maybe in my communications and my videos. And you're like, I would love a lead
Well, I was about to say
refinery.
that's the thought leadership piece. That's the bit you're posting
Totally.
on the interwebs all the time. That's the thing that you're
Yeah.
throwing up into social media. And
Yeah.
most people are posting free organic content.
Yeah.
And I mean, like we encourage our people to post 5 times a week as a minimum.
Love it.
And if you've got a methodology, it's usually got, as we talked about, big chunks. So there are big themes. They're all outcome focused. And you never run out of things to write about. You're also running ads, I see. Are you running ads?
Yeah. I love ads. Ads are great. They're I built my whole business off of ads. Yeah.
Because I'm going to say that I think one of the more recent ads that I saw of yours was actually you running through some of the building blocks of a methodology,
Yeah.
which is I think it was something to do with crafting offers.
Exactly.
But in doing so, it was also incorporating that thought leadership language, which is this is where you're stuck. You've tried this other one. It didn't work out, but this is why I have my way of doing it. And my way of doing it works like this.
Exactly. Perfect. If there was a meta description of how to introduce a solution thought leadership style and also set things up for an offer of implementing that solution, like that's the perfect description of it, right? Like, hey, I used to have the problem that you are currently dealing with, and I was using the solutions that you're currently using, and they were failing me in these ways, and I didn't like the outcomes because I wanted these outcomes instead. So I went and I innovated and I created / discovered a new way of doing things. Here's what it is. Here's how it works. Here's the outcomes it produces. If you'd like to learn more, click here. I'll give you a tool and a video walkthrough. That's essentially my ad, but like that's essentially every ad I ever write. I'm just swapping out I'm just
But
swapping out the problem and the solutions and the outcomes. Yeah.
but again, we're stacking here. You can't do it
Yeah.
really unless you have a methodology. Otherwise, all you're doing
Totally.
is
Yeah.
you're saying, I do this type of job that everybody else does, and I do it the same as everybody else, and you should
Yeah.
hire me because I live in the same neighborhood as you. And that's what most people rely on. You
Yeah.
know, they go to breakfast, they go to evening events. They're the local web developer, and people hire them just because they live in the same neighborhood. And I don't know, it's just not the way that the world is trending. So
Yeah.
offers, we have been talking about how to write better offers without you even
Yes.
realizing it, guys and gals. Even things like the lead refinery, right?
Yeah.
It's a new name for an old concept. Ross has got his own twist on it. It's a refinery, which means that you're pulling out better quality leads. My first big seed launch, Ross, my first big 7-figure launch, the first product that I sold that made $1 million was also a course on how to generate leads. What do you know?
Mm.
Had a terrible name, but the
Mm.
name made sense in context. It was called The Recipe. And the
Mm.
reason why I called it The Recipe was that everybody was saying you need to do all these different things. And I said, wouldn't it just be nice if you had a simple recipe? And I
Yeah.
said, just like making pancakes, you need like flour, eggs, and milk. If you want to
Mm.
collect leads, you need a lead gen tool, a landing page, and email follow-up. Let's do that together. And then that was my
Yeah.
3 bits. And that was like 7 years ago.
Yeah. Well, perfect. Like if you were to oversimplify and break down the lead refinery, like it's essentially the same thing. It's an ad, it's an opt-in page, it's a lead magnet, it's a confirmation page, it's a series of email follow-ups. But I use all of those tools in a certain way to achieve a certain outcome that fits my overall methodology so that I can have like a business where I'm open every day, right? Where I'm focused on consistency of new leads, consistency of new customers, consistency of monthly recurring revenue. Because being open every day is very about consistency as opposed to Jeff Walker and the launch model, where it's like big spiky revenue and then nothing for a
Too
while,
frightening.
right?
Too frightening for
Yeah.
little and me. I played that game and I didn't like it.
Yeah.
How to write better offers. I've just suddenly become aware of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
How to write better offers. I also just noticed as well too when Ross was talking before. He mentioned blah 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 within 45 days.
Yeah.
There's just these little bits that are like dropping into the conversation here. He didn't say 6 weeks, which is 45 days. He said 45 days because if you say 2 months, that sounds like a long time. If I say 6 weeks, that sounds like a long time. If I say 45 days, it sounds like less time. Indeed, if Ross could turn that into hours, he probably would. If he could turn it into seconds without
Seconds.
sounding
Yeah.
ridiculous, he probably would. But anyway, let's talk about how to write better offers, even though we've been
For
talking about
sure.
it.
Yeah.
What's a dumb thing to do? Mistake.
Yeah. So what I would say is I'll give you the 3 things that I definitely do, because the dumb thing would be the violation of one of them. So every offer needs 3 components, right? One is going to be the promise, which is what is the specific tangible outcome I will get from doing this thing or implementing this thing or learning this thing, right? It's always going to be about a specific, and it's always going to be anchored to a series of problems or obstacles that the person has in from their perspective, right? So that's the first thing. The second then is going to be the product, which is how does this thing fit in my life to reasonably make me feel like the promise will credibly be achieved. So if I say to you, "Hey, James, we'll build a lead gen system so that you get 50 leads a day in the next 45 days," right? Would you like to work with me? And you're like, "Awesome, yeah, absolutely. How does it work?" And I explain to you, well, I'll send you 2 text messages giving you the instructions, and then it's up to you. Like, you're going to be like, that's not going to work for me. That product doesn't fit with what I know I need in order to get this, right? Alternatively, if I said, well, James, like, you're going to have to show up every day at 9 a.m. and we're going to like grind this out for 6 hours every day for the next 45 days, you're also going to be like, no, that also doesn't sound like it's going to fit for what I'm looking for. So the product has to credibly appeal to what the person is looking for from a product solution fit, right? It has to fit in their world, and it has to enhance the credibility and the feeling of certainty that this outcome will be achieved, right? And this applies to everything from your iPhone to lunch, again, to like how you're selling a B2B slash like consulting style of offering, right? It has to fit in their world and it has to feel credible, right? So if they believe in the promise and they believe that the outcome is going, or the product fits and it's going to do the thing that they feel like they want it to do, the last part then is the proposition, which is great. So I believe that I want the outcome that you're promising, and I believe that what you're proposing will get it done. What are the terms? What are you asking? The proposition is the actual ask component of an offer, and that's the price. It's the terms of duration. How long is the engagement or the implementation period? Right? What's the guarantee? Is there any risk reversal? Are there payment terms? Are you adding in bonuses? Like, this is kind of like the proposition, essentially. Right? Here's the deal, right? We'll get the outcome. This is the
funny thing is
product.
our second big program after the recipe was called the pointy end. And we called our second training program the pointy end because it's what you're describing. It's the pointy end of the deal.
Yeah.
And people mess it up. They get scared away. The other thing about Ross, what was doing there, he said you come up with funny, clever names. And that one he didn't. He just came up with words that rhymed, kind of, not rhymed. They all began with P.
P, the 3 Ps. Yeah.
Yeah, the 3 Ps.
Totally. But that's like, and essentially, like, again, taking another hack from your methodology, like, I have observed, like, I didn't come up with any of this, right? Like, I observed the marketplace and other providers and found what I see to be useful for me to do the job of assembling an offer. And I'm like, oh, that's actually a great way to break it down. That helps me break an offer down. And then I'm like, well, I don't use that person's words. These are the words I use for those 3 things. And then I'm like, yeah, let's turn them into 3 Ps. And so absorb what is useful and then turn it into your own. That's the ultimate way to assemble IP, but it has to be your own. That's like the ethical part that I'm a stickler for. And I tell people, like, we're all standing on the shoulders of giants. No one is really coming up with original ideas, but you can express the ideas that you have found to be useful and that you actually use yourself. Yeah, that's totally legit, even if you learned them from somewhere.
And as you said earlier, people have to say, I like the way this person thinks. Totally. And the way that, like, Ross breaks that down into 3 bits, someone goes, oh yeah, I like the way that this person thinks. That is something that I can consume. It was the promise, it was the product, and it was the proposition. And I'm going to unpack that briefly just to emphasize the points. The promise, if you've got a clear target audience and the outcomes they're seeking, that's the promise that you make. We've got a saying in our world, Ross, which is smaller promises get faster decisions. Yes. And we see people go and they say, what will you do? Come into my world and I will transform it and everything will be better. Yes. And then you get people that say, with your lead refinery, would you like an extra 30 leads in 30 days or 30 leads?
Get you to 50 leads a day in the next 45 days. Yeah.
So it's a far more contained promise. It's like, I know what I'm getting here. I'm going to get leads. I'm not going to get this transformation thing. And then Ross has gone and quantified it even further. So then it becomes even clearer. And then I can, when we get to the proposition phase, I can think about whether he drops the price and my brain's going to see whether I'm going to get a return on investment, whatever it's going to be. So target audience, clear promise, smaller promises are better. Then we have the product piece, which is whether what did you say? Whether it will be credibly achieved, whether the promise will be credibly achieved. And if you've got a process, if you've got a methodology, I'm going to be reassured. The proposition,
and the part there, the part you nailed that part, but it's also, it has to fit the person's world. So for example, like Simon Bowen, right? Guy's a millionaire. I'm assuming, like, at the level of business he's dealing with, I don't know his financials, but like, just look at him. He's busy. He's running a giant coaching team. And so if I was making a promise to Simon Bowen, like, I'm not going to sell him a do-it-yourself online program that has 500 hours of content, because that product doesn't fit what someone like Simon wants to buy, right? Like, Simon wants to pay high-end fees for personal attention and get a time compressed delivery of that thing because he's short on time, right? So the product has to fit the market, and then they also have to feel like how it fits, it will credibly achieve the promise that you're making. So that's the only little nuance I would add to your recap.
Yeah, and by the way, that's very useful that you brought that up, because that is actually a piece of the puzzle that in our world we often forget, because we like, oh, this is the way that I want to serve the client, and that doesn't necessarily match the way that the client wants to get served. The proposition we could talk about for hours. You mentioned things like, the prices. We often come in with 3 different pricing plans, so that we can do a bit of anchor pricing there, and having 2 options is better than 1, because it's like it becomes either or rather than a yes or no. 3 is even better again, because we can steer them to the one in the middle. Usually it's the one that we want them to take. Bonuses can be used to, for scarcity reasons, scarcity purposes. I've got this. I've got an opinion, Russ. It's a controversial one. I actually believe that it is unethical not to create urgency in sales. And I believe that because if it takes you 3 meetings to close a client, 5 times to close a client, meetings to close a client, someone's going to pay for that. And the person that's going to pay for that is the client.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. Like I think so scarcity is a loaded topic, and I think it depends on the context of things. Like when people use the term scarcity and urgency, like really what they're talking about is getting the person to make a decision one way or the other,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And like
that's not what I'm describing. I'm describing if the person is the perfect fit, that you can help, and you know that they're probably going to say yes anyway, but you don't want it to take 3 meetings. You want them to make a decision there, so you can start helping them immediately. And as small business owners, we don't budget our time a lot of the time. But like if you allocated $1,000 to every hour of your time, and you have to have 3 meetings to close every client, it's costing you $3,000 to close the client.
Yeah.
And sometimes it might be a $4,500 client. So that doesn't make sense. Yeah,
totally. Like that from a business perspective, helping people make decisions faster, I think, is a big part of it.
But yeah, being a bully and a scumbag and telling lies is obviously never going to be
not cool, right? And misrepresenting and like saying, "Oh, there's only 5 spaces," and then you get 5, and you take another 10.
We don't like false scarcity.
Totally, yeah. But I think for sure, helping people make decisions faster and like closing loops, I think, is a big deal, because like for a lot of people, it's like, it's for me, I would give people deadlines, but I'm also giving people deadlines because I'm trying to screen for people who are able and willing to make decisions quickly and get on with it. Like I'm not interested in working with someone who is going to take them. Like if I've laid out the case and they have all the information, they need to do it, but they're just deferring and delaying because they have anxiety over making a decision. It's like, well, you're just demonstrating to me that you're not the type of person that I want to work with. So it's like, this is the deadline. You either in or out. If they don't make a decision, I'm moving on. You know what I mean?
You're the lighthouse, not the tugboat.
Totally. That's love that. Right.
But however, we are talking about right, better offers. And the funny thing is that a lot of the stuff that we're talking about is structure. It's structure right from the outset. It's building it together. So even if you do get to that proposition bit, we're not like Gil from The Simpsons that's got to close the deal, deal. That's like coming up with these wild, crazy promises and money back guarantees and scarcity elements. It's built into it. It's already built into it, so that when you say it, you're not, so you don't, as you say, if someone's dragging their feet, you're not going to try and convince them to come back in. You're going to present them with the information. And if you've done that right, they go, yeah, that sounds like something I want.
Totally. The right people, for sure. Yeah. So, and again, when you break it down to those 3 categories, then you can start to see, well, where's the problem? Because I often hear people say, hey, like people aren't converting. I think I need to lower my price. And I'm like, well, let's look at your promise first. Is it even clear? And oftentimes it's not. And people are often discounting themselves because they have not, they just don't know how to articulate a clear promise. So I would say certainly like that's one of the things not to do, right? Is like treat your offer as this amorphous whole and then think it's not working, so I need to reduce my prices when you haven't like validated, like, well, have I clearly got this promise articulated in a way that it's going to feel obvious that they will get the result if they show up, and there's clear criteria for what success will look like that we both agree upon going in, right? Like the level of specificity I was giving earlier is an example where it's like, well, I'm either going to get that outcome or I'm not. And he seems very confident I will. And there's no gray area around whether this will have been successful or not. Either in 45 days, I will be getting 60 leads a day or I will not. And if I'm
Mm.
not, there's a guarantee and there's a terms and all this stuff, right? But it's like, it's also, it's putting down the marker saying, this is what success looks like, and you will achieve it or you won't. And if you don't, here's what will happen. Right. That's the other part that a lot of people don't do, is they're afraid to put the specifics in there because they're worried that they'll work with people and then those people won't get the result. Well, I can't help if like they don't implement, right? And it's like, well, we're both grown-ups here. Assume they're going to implement, put it in the guarantee that they need to implement, but also put the marker down and say, if you're this person and if you take these actions, you will get this outcome because I have a methodology that works. Right. So that leads us to the second thing I would say the big mistake is people oversell the methodology and they don't sell the outcome, right? You are really
Uh-huh.
selling outcomes, not procedures. You have to have a methodology. Don't get me wrong, right? Like in order to be perceived as like having the authority and whatnot, but people are not buying the methodology. They want to know you have one, but what they're buying is the outcome. And you see this a lot in like courses and sales pages, like you will learn, right? Or I will show you how to.
Yeah.
And then it's like all of these things, and it's all this pushing of like, well, I'll give you the procedure and I'll give you the methodology, but it's up to you to get the outcome. And that's a part where it just does not fill the person with confidence versus someone saying, show up for 45 days and you'll get this outcome. And if you don't, here's the terms of the guarantee. Like it's
Yeah.
worlds apart.
The magic word is get. Here's what you will get. Right? Not
Yes.
here's what you will learn, here's what you discover, here's what you will unlock, here's what you unpack. It's here's what you will get. And what I do know is that if, say I had like 10 people on the hook likely to buy, right? And I was specific and had a guarantee. Oh, let's say I'm not specific and I don't have a guarantee. I might say close 2 out of 10, right?
Mm.
Then, however, I get specific and I have a guarantee, I close 4 out of 10.
Mm.
Now, one of those 4 out of 10 might not do anything at all. And then they come back 30 days later and they say, hey, listen, I'd like to exercise that guarantee. And I give them the refund. I've still sold 3 out of 10 instead of 2 out of 10. Now that there is a very simplistic example, and it's not like 2 or 3 or 4 out of 10. It's usually out of 100 people, you might, if you're selling 10 out of 100 people, you might sell 20 out of 100 people because you're clearer with the offer, and then you might lose one of those 20.
Yeah.
Totally. And it's this risk that you need to take. Sales go way up, and it does increase the likelihood that there are going to be people that are going to slip in and might not be the right fit. But the sum game is so much higher because you decided to back yourself and back your opinion. Now, I'm just very much aware of the time. Now, you have some templates and training that we can give away.
Yeah.
And I'm going to stick a link below here somewhere. What's that?
Yeah. So essentially I have a template, which is, I personally like to put my offers in email format or in a doc format to be able to just say, hey, would you like to work with me? I'm organizing a group to get this outcome, build a lead refinery as an example, or I'm organizing a group to help people convert via an offer doc instead of a sales call. Would you like to join us? And people say, oh yeah, I would. Can you share the details? And then I put the offer in this doc, and then I share the doc with the details of the offer. And then that's enough for them to say yes. So what I've got is a template, which is the template I use with all my new clients. I say, hey, great. This is like the proven template I've used myself in my own business for years. And it's a template I've helped, hundreds of people build offers with as well. You can get that for free. And then there's a video walkthrough kind of breaking down how to assemble an offer in that template using the same methodology framework I just shared with the product, the promise, and the proposition, like which parts of the doc is the promise, which parts the product, etc. And it's awesome. Like it's a great tool. A lot of people love it. Some people take it and go create an offer doc and use it themselves. But that's what I'd recommend you do.
I get totally excited about things like that. So yes, I'm very excited about grabbing it myself. When somebody presents something to you and they're an expert at their trade, you raise your hand and you leap on that and you grab it. So just to recap, we talked about 3 types of content from a copywriting perspective. One might be a methodology. Another one might be thought leadership pieces. The third one is offers. If you want to create an offer, it helps if you have the methodology, which allows you to be the thought leader and you become the offer. Yes, it was stacked. When it comes to an offer, there are 3 big parts: the promise, the profile, and the proposition, and every single one of them could be broken down. But what I love about it, Ross, is as you talk about it and as you do it, it's a description of what you're talking about anyway. I mean, like it's a methodology on how to create a methodology-based offer. Love it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. But again, just like notice the effects. And again, I'm not saying that everyone listening to this audience is like, oh my God, Ross is so smart. But I guarantee some people are, right? Because my method and how I think is what some people are looking for. Like a lot of my clients who are coming to me, like they go, oh, like he's an engineer. I like the way he thinks because he's clear and he's precise and he's got like sequential steps, right? It's why it's interesting that I said, yeah, you just do the steps, right? Because that's what a program and an engineer does. And like it's different to Simon's method where it's more visual, right? But some people just will hear me in the audience and go, oh, I like the way he thinks. He's broken it down like an engineer would. You just need to do your equivalent with your own way of doing the job that people are hiring you to do.
Yeah, rock and roll. Any final words of advice or wisdom before we wind up?
Yeah, like I would say just start making more offers and don't be shy about putting promises in your offer. It doesn't mean you have to make giant promises, because you were very wise what you said, James. Smaller offices or offers, I should say, smaller promises are easier to keep, right? And they sometimes will perform much better. But you got to put a promise in the offer, right? Because otherwise, it's hard for people to gauge, where are you taking me, right? But if you put the promise in there, you will see your conversions go up, even if it's not like a big hypey promise. And just understand that a promise is not a guarantee. Right. A promise is a clear, specific statement of what success will look like when this thing works. And a guarantee are the terms of what will unfold if the person does not get the outcome. Those are 2 very, very different things. But people are often, particularly ethical people, they've been burnt by some marketer who was making unethical promises and had some crap guarantee, and they were fooled. And then they're hesitant to put any promise in their offer. And that's not how the game is played. The market is looking to understand, where are you taking me? And you have to kind of put your pin on the map and say, I'll take you here in this time frame.
Awesome point to finish on. Ross, thank you for your time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, James. This is a blast.